batteries. Why would I buy lithium batteries when my Everstarts have worked for years? You have a bunch of questions about what's the best graphs to use. Where should I put my transducers? Rigging a boat nowadays, it ain't like how it was 15 years ago. Now, when you go to rig a boat, there's a lot of different components that you got to look for, know what to do with, and have a little better understanding than just plugging up a positive and negative and rolling with it. So, since I don't know, and a lot of this stuff is over my head when it comes to electronics, we got Paul Geddes in here. Paul Geddes owns Tactical Sonar. And listen, Paul, I don't remember this being a thing a couple years ago. I mean, like literally a couple of years ago. I don't think professional boat rigger was a thing until like usually you just had a guy in the dealership that would hook up a couple wires and that was it. But it's got to the point where our boats have become so smart and so dedicated to electronics that you got to have somebody that's literally dedicated to doing that. So Paul Geddes is going to be here to answer all your questions tonight when it comes to making a boat perform to today's standards, which we know is pretty in depth now. So if you got your questions about batteries, if you got your questions about how to wire stuff, you got your questions about what you should put on your boat. I know we're making this series about building your dream boat. So for a lot of us, going to the dealership and spending $120,000, $130,000 on a bass boat is not a reality. And so you can still get a boat you're proud of fishing out of by getting something that's 20 years old, 30 years old, and bringing it up. There's not a lot of technology in the boat hulls themselves that has changed for a very, very long time. It's mainly bolt-on products. And so we're going to show you how to bring those boats that you may have, kayaks, John boats, whatever it is, or if it's a fiberglass boat, I'm going to show you how you can make it something you're really proud to fish out of. So bring those questions to the chat. Paul, I appreciate you joining in on us at 8 o'clock on a Monday.
Oh yeah,
like,
no problem.
I'm sure you had your own problems you had to figure out here at work today, and then it come solve some more problems at 8 o'clock after you got off of work.
Oh,
Solve
you're good.
problems. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's all day, every day, man.
Awesome. So we've always had a bunch of questions here in the community about specifically electronics. Almost all that stuff is over my head. I know what works for me, and I know what makes my life easier, but explaining the science behind it, I'll leave that alone, which is the whole reason I got you here tonight.
Yeah.
One of the guys here in the group, his name's Tim Dotson. He actually posted a question in the community section earlier this week talking about lithium versus your traditional wet cell batteries, AGMs, or whatever we want to call it. We may even want to dive into that. What is an AGM and what is a wet cell or lead acid? We may even want to dive into that. But I think it's a good place to start since we are talking about bolt-on parts, electronics, etc. His question was just what's the difference, the pros and cons of lithium versus your traditional batteries. I know I've had experience with both, so I have some opinions, but I'm sure you got more facts. We can start there. I think that's a good place to start.
Okay. So like me and you growing up in our older boats, when I first started, AGM wasn't a thing. And what AGM is a gel battery. That means it's a maintenance-free battery. That means you don't have to actually do what we used to do. You have to, your battery wouldn't go, your boat wouldn't start. You're like, man, what's going on? Did I forget to check the water in the batteries?
Yeah.
You pop the lid off, you add, distilled water or acid, to it, fill it up, give it a good charge, and you're back up and running.
Yep.
Technology has changed where people don't want to do that anymore. Nobody wants to check a battery. They'll pull it out, throw it in the yard, and then go grab another one at AutoZone or Walmart or Sam's or wherever they can get it, just to get back on the water. So what they've done is they've come out with an AGM, and it's a gel matte battery.
Okay.
It's sealed, so you don't have to do any kind of maintenance on it. Now, your liquid cells are going to be your most cost efficient. You say your standard 31 series battery starts out at about $150. If that's what you're wanting to do, you're not running a whole lot of electronics, you're just getting started and you're on a strict budget. Okay, yeah, you can do that. That's no problem. You're just going to have to pay close attention. When the temperatures drop, that's when you're going to have to really start worrying about these batteries failing.
Okay.
Usually they have a year warranty on them.
That's about when they like mine used to always fail about a year,
Right.
9 months to a year. Bring them back to
Spring, you ready to
Walmart.
go?
Yep, right about that
Every
9 month
spring.
mark. Yep.
um, so the AGMs came along, and being maintenance free, the big deal was that they're a little bit heavier, but you never have to check anything. And they usually have like a 2-year warranty. Some have a 3-year warranty.
Right.
The high end batteries like that you ran last year, the X2 Extremes.
Right.
One of
I had
those.
good luck with those.
Yeah. They're probably the highest end gel matte battery that's sold. And, they're about $500 a piece.
Yeah.
They come with a 4 to 5-year warranty. So, you drop them off, hey, this thing's not working right. They test it, bring it back up to par. Okay, yep, it's not working right. They replace it. That's the benefit of spending a little bit more money up front. So you got to sort of weigh out, are you going to do a liquid cell and do $100 a year or $150 a year? And in 4 years, you got more than what you would have paid up front. Or do you go in and say, I'm just going to do it piece by piece, with the liquid cell? Right. Now let's jump into the factor is lithium, which Yamaha Mercury, year and a half, 2 years ago, came out and says, hey, we don't support lithium cranking batteries on our motors. Alternator doesn't like it. It just does not work well. But they rescinded both of those statements now and said, okay, yep, lithium, the technology from lithium batteries have basically grown so much that, okay, we approve a lithium cranking battery now. So what happens? So an example, say, who I use and who I sell a lot of is Powerhouse Lithium. So they've gotten to the point where, back in the day, if you sit out there and you messed around and you left something on or you left the live well on too long and it drained that battery down.
Done.
Yep. You got to get the jumper cables, whatever you got to do. You got to jump it off the motor batteries. I done done it 100 times.
You still doing it. I'm still doing it.
So now technology is you reach over, you have an emergency start button on the top of the battery. It reserves enough power to crank the motor up. Just like that.
Okay.
Now, to give you an idea where that technology jump is $999 for a cranking battery. You say you pay $1,000, but it's got a 15-year warranty.
Yeah.
So now you sort of got to weigh your options out. Do I want to play with batteries on the water? Do I want to fish? Or do I want to not worry about batteries at all and I just want to go do my thing? Now, there is some little bit of drawback with cold temperature charging, below freezing. You have to pay attention to that and stuff like that. But benefit-wise, all the way around, lithium is definitely the way to go. So there's two different types of main batteries. There's lithium ion, which is what they first came out with, which is, and I know you remember this, one of the Elite Series anglers' boat caught on fire at the class.
Like I remember a couple. I remember Chris Lane's, but then I feel like it was a couple others that caught on fire.
Yep. Those were lithium ion batteries. So now everything is basically changed over to lithium phosphate, which makes it a whole lot safer. You don't hardly deal with any kind of problems, at all.
These batteries nowadays are pretty much smart. From what I understand, I call it smart, as in when they get below a certain voltage, they go to sleep. They don't exist no more. They're
exactly.
Like, all right, I'm out.
That's what I was going to touch on. So, me and you both have dealt with that in a good and a bad way because
good and bad.
Yeah. So if we don't use the battery for a while, the battery is called a BMS system. So the BMS battery says, hey, you haven't put any strain on the battery, but you haven't charged me. You're not using me. So instead of me sitting here, I'm going to basically go to sleep.
I like that. That's a good attitude.
That's basically what happens is, so when you go to use it, it goes to 3 volts, which it will not do anything. So what you do, you got 1 or 2 options to wake it up. You take the leads off, let it sit for 5 minutes with no draw, no nothing on it. A lot of times that BMS will reset. Or if it's a 12-volt battery, you take the leads from a jumper cable to another 12-volt battery and just do just like you're jumping off another battery. Just push positive, positive, negative, negative. You touch it, it resets the BMS. Everything's woke up. You put it on the charger, you're ready to go.
Ready to go.
So the BMS systems right now, so to give you an idea, the batteries I just installed in my boat tonight, I'm running two 3660s, which is 36 volts a piece and 60 amp hours a piece. So 120 total. I just paralleled them. And then I run a 16 volt 140, and then a cranking battery that's a 12 volt 105 with an emergency start. Now I run a lot of electronics on my boat, but in the same sentence, what happens is all of these batteries are Bluetooth. So before you leave the house, you pull it up on Bluetooth, do whatever you need to do, pull the Bluetooth app up and say, hey, this one's 100, this one's 60, this one's 100, this one's 40, this one's 0. All right, we got an issue.
Yeah.
You know, let's reset real quick. Let's figure out what's going on with this one. You know, and then, you know, we can address it from there and figure out what the deal is.
Yeah. So that's the good thing about them. The problem that I've noticed is I have to get in the routine of doing exactly what you just said, because I'm still old school in the fact that when I plug this sucker up, I'm expecting it to do its job. I walk away, I go in the house, and when I come in here in the morning, I don't open up my phone and look at nothing. I go to the link, and then when I get there and I get to punch it around, I'm like, what the heck is going on here? But I do love the fact that you can diagnose the batteries now, because in the old days, one of the disadvantages is, you know, you got a problem. You know, this thing ain't working right. You know, you don't have any power. Now it's a guessing game, unless you have a voltmeter or something on your boat, which probably most of us normal people probably don't. Now you got to guess which one it is. Or are you just going to replace all three?
Exactly.
12-volt batteries. So I think that is an advantage to the lithium, being able to diagnose the batteries from your phone, seeing where they are, seeing if they're charging. But you got to get in the habit of actually looking at that.
It is. So the biggest thing I get the question for, and so I just came from a manufacturer where they were only done Relion. They only done 12-volt batteries.
Yeah.
So they don't have a 36. They're coming out with a 36 and a 24 and 16, stuff like that. So what they done was I run 3 12s, and then I paralleled 2 more 12s for electronics and cranking.
Right. Pretty much the same setup I got, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, the benefit of doing that was, like, I think I was on Chickamauga last year, and I had a battery jumper decide, hey, I've had enough.
Yeah.
I'm not working.
I'm
out. I'm done. So then I was able to take that battery out and switch over to 24 volts versus 36 volts and continue fishing the day. It took me about 15 minutes to do it. So I was able to go from a 36 to a 24, you know, like that. But in the same sentence, if I would have had, you know, a voltmeter, it was rough that day. It was exceptionally rough. And I broke a strap. And when the battery moved, it broke the lead.
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
So actually something similar happened to you pretty much when you were in rough. When one of the boats that we rigged, I think we had a little shorter lead.
It's something like that. I've had several little bitty things. I think one time I did have a lead pull. One time I had a lithium cranking battery just go kaput on me in a way, and I think that was before you. I might have been before one first couple boats I had your rig. I had a lithium cranking just out, going down the lake, done. And that was when I was running just one cranking battery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had some silly little things go on. Then I've had a battery to just flat out just go bad. Just it ain't no good.
Yeah, it's going to happen. I mean, basically, if you think about it, the way we used to run our boats with a 5-inch and a 7. If we had a 7-inch graph back then, we were doing something.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah, I had all 5s.
Yeah. I remember seeing a picture of one of your boats. I think it was an LMS 520, and pretty much I was like, "Hey, that's the same one I've got. That's the same one I'm running here." And then all of a sudden, a 7 came out, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the biggest graph I've ever seen." And I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna have to add another battery, and no, they didn't draw enough amperage back then to do anything.
I had a 5. I had a 5 on the front and a 7 at the console.
Yep.
And then I got really big and I got me an 8 at the console, and I moved that 7 to the front. That's when I was really doing something then.
Yeah. Well,
I was well into the game though. I was years into the game before I got electronics. Like years. Like we're talking about before I really. Then there was a space in there where I probably could have got them, and then I just wasn't really interested in it that much. But I want to say the first time I had 2 graphs on the back of my boat was 2017.
Really?
So not that long ago. Not that long ago.
Well, in 2009, my dad taught me. I had seen it, but basically he was really burning me in and blistering my tail with a flasher. With little George.
I said I grew up with doing that.
I mean, he was like, "Oh, there they are," and I'm like,
"Yeah.
What are you
what? That's video game fishing. They always talk about video, this video, that. You ever looked at a flasher? That's a true video right
there. Yeah. I remember running down the lake, and he's like, "Oh, look at that hump right there," and it's showing on the flasher coming up, and then going back down.
Yeah. Yep. If it come up real fast. So my first couple of boats, like first 2, my dad, it was engraved in my brain, like you just talked about. My dad always ran a flasher at the console to make sure you didn't run up on anything, because back then that was the transducer you put in the hole so you could look at what you were doing while you were driving, so you didn't hit stuff. And so, I used to have a flash, and you'd watch that red line go when it started going up. You better bring your off pad. That's how we used to watch for the depth when you were riding. But now I don't even know if I pay attention to depth anymore as much as I do just watching my map. But I didn't have a map back then on my console either, though.
Well, we didn't have all these 1-foot contours and all of that stuff.
No.
That I know you. I don't know if you've ever paid attention to it, but when you come in the shop, the top right old Lowrance paper graph.
Oh yeah. I grew up on that too. My dad did have those.
Yeah. So I've still got a pen and a paper, and I remember my dad starting to fuss and cuss, running down the lake, saying, "You got to change that paper and that pencil. It's done run out again."
Yeah. You know what's wild about that is those paper graphs had really good detail.
Oh yeah.
It was really like for it to be as old as it was way more detailed than the first liquid cell units, or whatever we call the digital units.
Oh yeah.
The X70s. The first digital units I had was X70A and 350 LMS.
Oh yeah.
I even run them on my first boat. I know I had that. But after I went back and looked at those, I was like, "Oh man, this is actually really trash." I mean, it looked like Tetris.
Yeah.
But the actually the old paper graphs, if you ever look at the print on that, you're like, "Man, this is actually pretty detailed."
Yeah, it's pretty good. It is. I left mine marking the last place that we fished, and that's what's on the screen in the showroom. Everybody looks at it and it's like, "Man, that's so detailed." Like the pencils, like on it,
Yeah.
It is
actually really detailed. So I guess that's probably military stuff that they brought. Because didn't they use that for? I don't remember what it was, but I feel like I remember seeing pictures and stuff like that in high school and middle school when you're looking at for sonar readings.
Yeah, so like a seismograph is basically
seismograph. There you go.
It sort of generated. That's where it sort of came from, where they took that technology and pretty much pulled it over.
Now, here's a question for you. Old paper graphs. This is going to blow some people's mind. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this. You might not be either. I know I'm definitely not old enough. I remember the graph, but I never bought one. You remember how much that graph costs? What cheap?
the one that I think my dad, the one I have in my showroom, I want to say, and it's an 8 inch. It's a big block.
Mm-hmm.
The screen is only like 6 inches or something like that, but I mean the
But
unit
it's
is like
just
blocky.
big. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was like $625, and back
Was
then
it?
it
Yeah.
was like, I mean, that was a big chunk of money back then.
Right. I thought it was maybe a little higher because even the LMS 350s, like the GPS models, they weren't under $1,000.
No,
I don't
no,
remember being that. They
no.
weren't under $1,000. So if you think about it, it kind of hadn't moved that much.
Yeah,
If you compare apples to apples, you size like if you took a X78, which would probably be like a 7-inch screen, if I'm thinking right,
yep,
maybe.
yep.
I mean, the 7 now is probably $1,200. Is that about right?
Well, you got a
7?
9 inch. The economy, the middle of the road, is $999 for a 9 inch.
Yeah, that's actually not that much in 30 years.
Yep.
It's not that big a difference. Oh, that's my bad. I think my camera battery went dead. Hold on just a second here, Paul. It won't be as good an image, but I'll be there.
There you go.
Yeah. I think my camera battery went dead. Sorry about that, Mike. I don't know what's going on with it. All right. But anyway, the prices, I think just because it's easier to build stuff now probably too than it was. Yeah, I think in 1994, it's probably a lot harder to get materials to build units and so forth like that.
Yeah.
Let's check this. Let me check this chat here before we move on to this next subject. So let's do a little recap. The pros of lithium batteries. Some of the pros would be obviously maintenance free. Another thing probably would be, I would say, is a pro. It's just being able to see what your batteries are doing, diagnose what's wrong with them if you have a problem.
Correct.
What else do we got? We got anything else? Am I missing anything else when it comes
So the big thing is charge time, and obviously the big thing we didn't talk about was weight wise.
Oh yeah, weight for sure. Yeah. Let's hit on that a little bit. How much
So to give you an idea, so the batteries that we ran in your boat last year, the 2X2s,
right?
Those are big boys. Those are 89 pounds a piece. I mean, those are like heavy.
Yeah, that's the big battery.
Yeah. So the standard lithium cranking battery, 26 pounds.
Okay. That's a big difference.
Okay. So yeah. So to give you an idea, when I took out 5 AGMs and went to 5 lithiums, I lost 270 pounds out of the boat.
Yeah, that's a half tank of gas.
And that's a person basically.
Yeah,
It's a big boy that you're losing.
Yeah, two of me, maybe 3 of me. 2 of me at 162 pounds. I done gained 10 pounds. Handle a round of applause. I done gained a couple pounds.
There you go.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. So you got to think about it. You remember when we used to take off?
Yep.
Now everybody's taking up out of the hole, everything else. Here's the other thing that most people are. When I went all lithium, these boat manufacturers were not ready.
They were not ready.
No. So basically what happened was when I went all lithium, I made it. You go to take off, the boat blows out, everything else. I had to go in and move my motor down 1 notch on the jack plate because it lifted that boat up so much more in the water from not having all that weight.
Yep.
And it was crazy. It didn't handle right until I moved that motor down. Now, when I moved the motor down, it was scarred.
Yeah. It's funny. People don't believe this, but I know the first couple boats that I put lithiums in, this is going to sound so crazy because you just said how many you lost 200 something pounds. My boat was slower.
Exactly.
My boat was slower because it was weighted. It was for those batteries, so I couldn't get bow lift.
Exactly.
So I couldn't get the boat out of the water. It was basically running like this, and it was slowing me down to have 200 pounds less weight.
Yep.
Because you got to think your boat is on a teeter-totter, just like a seesaw. And so
Yeah,
now you got all that trolling motor, all that tackle, all that stuff at the front. And so it's not designed to lift from
exactly.
that fulcrum point. So it
Exactly.
changed all the ergonomics of the boat, and it actually slowed down even though it was lighter.
Yep. Yep.
Your weight distribution is everything when it comes to, especially we tell it we can sense it easier on a bass boat just because they move so fast.
Yeah.
But the smaller that boat gets, the more sensitive it's going to be to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you'll be surprised if you got an older boat and you're going to put lithium in there and you lose 3 or 4 miles an hour. That's why. That's what's going on. That'll
You
definitely
have
happen.
to adjust that motor angle, because you just sort of think about it like this. If this motor is so far, it's set up for all these heavy batteries, and then all of a sudden that it's like you're raising the jack plate up
Yeah.
and trying to tip
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
essentially what you're trying to do, but it's a permanent lift. So you have to basically take it out and move it down, 1 notch, or either put a jack plate. I've even seen, and I know, I can't remember what model older Ranger you had. I had a 391 and a 374. Um,
I had
and-
my first Ranger was a 195. It was
okay.
way. Listen, I didn't have lithiums to 2020 or 2021.
Yeah.
So I was definitely in Falcons by the time I had lithiums.
Yeah.
Then
So,
after I had 195s, a Z20, and then I started running the 520s.
yeah. So, like on those older boats, we put a lot of lithium batteries in those older boats. So I have to basically put on the work order, hey, must water test before customer gets the boat back.
Yeah.
And my initial thing is to make sure it's not nosedive, because that's exactly what they're so heavy as it is.
Yeah.
They love the nosedive, and they don't have that lift. Just exactly what you're talking about. They just can't do it.
Yep.
So we have to move it down.
That boat in particular, they run like that too. Like even when they don't have lithiums in there, they run.
Oh yeah,
like trim down. They just plow the water.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a big problem, and it could be even a bigger problem if you get out a boat and you navigate like big water, not rough water like what we have around here in the Carolinas. I'm talking about the stuff that sink your boat.
Oh yeah.
It can you really got to start thinking about all that stuff then. That's where you need to keep the bow up high, and you might not get that. You might not get that out of there. So yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought all that stuff up because I forgot about those aspects of
the weight is definitely a big kicker. So I mean, the easy thing to think of is, even if you have, just say, everybody's favorite Ranger is that 04 to 06, that VX model. That's like,
yes, sir.
That favorite, everybody loves. So everybody's holding on to those boats and coming in and saying, hey, I got 20 grand. I am not spending 125 on a new Ranger. But what can you do for 20 grand? What would be your selections? What would you do? Because I'm not getting rid of this boat. This is my favorite boat ever. Yeah. And that's
kudos to that guy, by the way. Like, for the self-awareness on that, I appreciate stuff like that, because that's a lane that everybody kind of forgets about. Is the fact that you can take these older boats and there's not a lot of technology. That's, like I said, there's not a whole bunch. There's a few things, but not a lot's changed in 30 years when it comes to boat building. Not a lot changed. Materials have went up high. That's why our prices are so high. And then our engines, thank God our engines are better than they were back in the day. But kudos to that crowd. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I had to give them guys their flowers.
Oh yeah, no, man. I tell you what, we have a ton of those guys because I think everybody's doing. They go to a boat show. They come to the tournaments. They see all the pros boats and like, ooh, and I want this, I want that, and then they look at the price tag and they're like, oh my,
it's crazy.
That's not going to happen.
It's wild. It's actually like I never thought we would get. I knew they were going to always be expensive. I just didn't think we were going to where we are now, though.
Well, it's insane. But I mean, if you think about it, like we were talking about earlier before the thing, if you come to me and said, hey, man, this is my boat, this is my deal, I'm keeping this boat, but it's got 10 years on it. It's time to do some checks. These are the things. I'd sit down and say, hey, these are the things that if you're going to fish, be a weekend warrior, or you're going to fish BFLs, or you're going to fish tournaments, or you're going to fish whatever you do, whatever level you're going to fish, these are the primary things that needs to be checked and updated. That is going to basically, first of all, secure your fish to keep them alive. You know, keep your electronics, your motor, make sure, you know, and that's just that little list right there that really keeps everything.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to get out there and, hey, I just spent 20 grand, but I can't keep my fish alive.
You're right.
You know,
what's give me like what's some of the best upgrades that you would say somebody should make if they have a 20-year-old boat and they're looking to, you know, to bring it up to par?
So first things first, and this is what I tell all my customers. If they bring me an older boat and say, hey, you know, I know this, I've got this working sometime, my lights work this way, my light works this way. So first things first that I try to start out with is fish care and then safety. So when I say fish care, of course, I'm going to change the aerators out.
Right.
You know, I'm going to put upgraded aerators to keep everything as hot as it gets in the summer, you know, as cold as it gets, pretty much. That way we got good aerators. You know, if we're going to put oxygenators in them, that's an upgrade or whatever else. But aerators, of course, to keep your fish alive. But the other things that we're looking at is we're going to most likely, because all these older boats come with a 250 or a 500 gallon per hour, you know, bilge pump.
So the little yellow Mayfairs used to come in the Rangers. Trash.
Exactly. Yeah,
them little yellow Mayfairs will go out if you get in dirty water. To spin a prop. God, I used to listen, Paul. I used to carry about 4 of them in my boat with me. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, listen to this. Hey, this is a cool story. Y'all listen to this. I wish Marty's fishing right now. The first BFL I should have ever won in 2006. I lost on a dead fish penalty. Marty Robinson beat me by 1 ounce. I should have won by 7 ounces, but I lost by an ounce because of a dead fish, because of one of them gosh dang on little yellow Mayfair.
They were
awful little freaking aerators. Them suckers used to go out. You'd just be running and let, God forbid, you fishing during the herring spawn and one spit up some shaft and suck it into that intake. Oh my God. Or if you put your boat in reverse, you know, you suck up that gravel.
Exactly.
Oh man, them things were I lost so much money over them little Mayfair. Yep. Whatever we're using now, I don't know what they're putting in the boats now. Whatever it is, I have legitimately not replaced a aerator since the yellow ones.
Yeah. So just to touch on that a little bit to give you an idea. So the difference between the Mayfairs that you're talking about, think about the little impellers that sucks up everything. They were like little combs, like little small, thin. If you got one tiny little gill, one tiny little
strip it out,
it gone. I mean, it would just twist it. And
the aerators weren't cheap.
I know. So it was absolutely nuts. And then you look at these new ones, and it's like a helicopter blade. I mean, it's like an impeller in an actual motor. They do motor them. They're so much tougher. I mean, we took one part of the day. It had acorns and pebbles and everything else, and it was still running. It would go, But we took it out, cleaned it out, put it back in there, and
ready to go.
I mean, easy peasy.
Yeah, I have not had one go out since those days.
Yeah. So going back to what the main thing, that's where I would sort of start out. I would start out, hey, we're going to change the aerators. We're going to change your bilge pumps. One of the things, you know, like when we were growing up, you know, hey, we're gonna dip the bag over the side and get some water, and then we're gonna reach down in there and get our arms soaking wet and try to chase some fish around. Yeah. You know, try to take everything else. You know, now we all have pump outs. You know, we pump all the water out, you know, then we let the water get down, get some fish, whatever, go from there. We offer that as an option. Hey, we can add a pump out system and say, hey, if you don't want to, it's 20 degrees out. If you don't want to go get your ice, you know, like Iceman and get frozen, you know, we can do that. But then once we go to there, then we sort of say, you know, we got the safety part. If you're going to get into some rain or you're going to take on some water, those bilge pumps we put an automatic in, but we also put that manual in that both of them can kick in, and we'll either go to 1,000 or 1,500 gallon per hour. It can really move some water out.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many times have you backed the boat in and forgot to put the plug in?
Yeah, probably about every other time. I'm trying to clean the floor up in my boat or something.
Yeah.
Every other time.
Yeah, you hear that bilge come on, it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah. I do it all the time. Yeah. It takes mine a little while before it comes on. I usually done tied it up. Then I come back to go get my truck. And then it's done. Or I've done it where I hadn't turned my power on yet.
Yeah.
And then you get back and like, where's this water coming up in the floor for us? And it's like, you probably need to fix that.
Yeah. So during the herring spawn last year, I told my guys, I said, hey, I'm gonna take y'all out, show you some fishing and everything else. Well,
right.
They backed me off in my boat, backed the other little boat off, everything else. Here we are, 3 boats tearing down Lake Hartwell, down toward the dam and everything else, and getting down through there. I sit down, and all of a sudden, when I sit down, the wave comes forward. I'm like, oh
no.
So my guys are like all beside me and everything else, and they come up schooling, and I'm like, hold on just a sec. Took my shirt off, dove in.
I had to get on.
And then I was like, man, you crazy? I don't know. I said, man, I am not going back to the ramp. I said, we a hump. Well, we can put that in right there. Don't worry about it. I got a sweatshirt in here. We good.
Hey, that's probably a good point too. I think every Falcon always puts the remote plug in. I haven't had any problems with them, but also, not to brag, but just being realistic, I get a boat every 9 to 12 months. But if you get to using that thing for a couple of years, they're bad about sometimes, especially if it's cold.
Yep.
It'll freeze around it. If it's cold, you better make sure you close that remote plug at night, because if water leaks out of there, then you can't get a good seal in the morning.
Yeah.
And then now you ain't got a plug. Or if that cable breaks, now you still don't have a plug.
Yeah. So there's a little secret with that. And it's probably something you need to keep in your boat.
I do, because I ain't got nothing.
Yeah. So like little petroleum jelly or chapstick.
Yeah.
Put another little rubber seal around it.
Yep.
Just run it in your drain plug right there and run around that. Run it in and run it out just a couple of times. Flip it back and forth. That way that ice won't stick on that.
Okay. Good. Yep.
So, but that's the other thing. That's you beat me to the actual plot. That's what I was going to say is most people don't actually realize that we can actually put those in the older boats.
Yeah, it's just you buy it. It's probably cheap.
Yeah, it's $119, and that's the easiest thing you'll ever do.
Yeah, a whole lot easier than putting on 4 more grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it makes it easy peasy. If like you said, you've been running down the lake and like, oh man, I forgot to put the plug in. You just lean back, turn it on, and you
turn it on, keep on going. Because it's every other trip for me. There ain't no doubt. It's at least every other trip I'm probably forgetting to put that plug in.
Then after that, then we pretty much address the graph situation. And say, hey, what are you really wanting to do? Are you wanting to learn forward-facing sonar? Are you on a budget? Tell me what else, you got in mind, and say, we're going to do 1 graph at the console, and then we're going to do 1 up front to start out with.
Yep.
Or are we going to do 1 at the console and then 2 up front, so you have 1 for mapping and 1 for dedicated just for forward-facing sonar?
Yeah.
And I'll be 100% honest. So if you're on a tight budget and it's something that you really want to do and you're building the dream boat, but you don't have that, I mean, you were talking about this last week when we first started talking about this, is how you started out. How I think most of our generation started out, was the, hey man, you got a set of poles? No, I got 1 pole.
1 pole, my guy.
1 pole.
1 pole. 1.
You hope that wind don't blow.
Yeah. 1 pole. Hey, still better than nothing. Give me my 1 pole. I ran around 1 pole for years. Years. Yeah.
And I started off with 1 at the console and 1 up there, and that's all I had. I mean, that was it. But when I started seeing these power poles come out and everything else, my dad was like, "Man, we can make that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
A fiberglass stick. You know,
Yeah.
we'll make a
Jab it
housing.
down.
We'll put that jam down. And
Yeah.
you just sit there. You catch that fish. And I'm like, man, that's an awful lot of work. But I got to looking. You get that one pole, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's
So I'm gonna do the classic bar guy here. I can one up you on that one, man. I my very first bass boat, I just had a graph at the front.
Really?
And I used to put my trolling motor down in the water, turn the graph towards the console, and idle around looking for bait balls. I sat on the very first boat I had.
Yeah.
So I bought my dad's Winner. He had a 1990 Winner. It's a 19-footer. I bought that boat. I did not have it. He took the graph off the console and put on it on his new boat. And then I bought that boat and left the X70 up front. I used to use the X70. I turned that sucker sideways and I'd look at whatever I needed to while I was idling with the trolling motor down. I'm not recommending that nobody else does that. I'm saying that's what I had to do, was just one thing at a time. So that's the story that we're trying to tell you here. You might not be able to get all this stuff that we're talking about all at once. 5 lithium batteries and 5 graphs. That's not, it doesn't have to go that way. If you're thinking, man, that's 40 grand I'm gonna need. Yeah, it is. But you get 5 grand here, 2 grand there.
So this is so this is the thing that I was going to tell you. So this, I know this, but a lot of people that's probably not real familiar with the industry on our side of it. If you know what you do every year, I know what I do every year. I know what happens pretty much at come November. I'm trying to move my boat. You're trying to move your boat. You're trying to move. Okay, this, and this. Every year, somebody wants to buy that boat, but they're like, man, I don't need 5 graphs, 3 active targets. I don't need all that. Can you take this off and give me a price with this graph on, or say 2 graphs and 1 active target, or whatever? And then, so what happens is now we take trade-ins. And the reason I started taking trade-ins was people want to upgrade all the time.
Yeah.
But let's just say, if someone came to me and says, hey, I got $5,000, I'm really wanting to get into the, forward-facing sonar world, I'd put him in a Lowrance FS12, a 9, and a forward-facing sonar, and he's sitting at about $4 grand and has the latest and greatest of everything. But if he still can't go that way, like right now, we have active target 1s and LVS 32 systems that's $600 that you can get into the forward-facing sonar world with. No, not as good as the latest and greatest.
You ain't got the latest and greatest money, though.
Yeah, exactly.
You got one money. Yeah. You get 2 monies. You get 2 products.
So there is a way to get into the world. And I had to take it slow. You had to take it slow. Everybody has to take it slow.
Still taking it slow.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says, and I see it every day. I see daddy come in, and I see the high schooler come in, or the college come in.
Yeah.
And the college kid, and daddy looks over and says, tell him what you want. And then
what is that?
Yeah, exactly. And my office manager's like, did he seriously just say that?
Yeah.
I mean, and $30,000 later, and daddy's writing a check, and they, went to McDonald's and didn't like it. And then now they're fishing on the weekends. And it blows my mind every single day.
Yeah.
It is.
It's not a good way to start off fishing, in my opinion.
No.
I feel like I know high school fishing is competitive.
Yeah.
But and what I'm about to say is going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. Michael, we're still on Facebook, because what I'm about to say is going to piss somebody off. This is one of them things that people clip and say, listen, this is what this turd head said. But it's the truth. All right, you spend $30,000, $40,000 on electronics, trolling motors, graphs, and wire harness, etc., and you're a kid for high school fishing. Those tournaments don't matter at all. They don't have payout. Nobody's going to look at what you did at high school and give a fat cat. You could fail. It's not just because you don't have the electronics that mean you're going to fail anyway, but let's just say you failed the entire way through these high school tournaments. Nobody cares.
Yep.
No, like it doesn't matter. You can, at that point, you really should just be harnessing the love of the sport. Do you even like going? Go catch a crappie, a brim, a bass, a striper, a catfish, anything. Just freaking go fishing. And don't let anybody tell you that the things that we were doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago don't exist. That they still do.
Yeah.
And if you can learn how to do that and then you start pairing that with the electronics when they get a little older and they can work and get their own stuff, boy, you're going to have the next Dustin Connell or Jacob Wheeler or whoever you think the next, the best fisherman is.
Yeah.
But that is such a sad story when they come in because the parents think they're supporting the kid, but you're taking away, robbing that kid of a lot of lessons.
Well, and we also see is we'll rig that boat, we'll do everything, and I'll pull him aside and say, "Hey, you sure you want to do this? I mean, is he serious about this fishing thing? Because there ain't no returns.
No.
If he's and I'll do whatever you want me to do, but I says I'm going to tell you what the no-nos are and what the go-go's are. Yeah. So you just need to sit here and say, this is what you're wanting to do, but it's your money, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. But I want to make sure you understand, soon as I put this on here and he fishes for a year and you go to sell this boat, you're not getting
you don't get it back.
No.
You don't get none of that money back. No. Listen, if there's any parents listening, I don't know where we're streaming it still, Michael, but listen, if there's any parents. And listen, Paul, and I may be cutting Paul's throat by saying that because some parents are about to go spend 50 grand with him. But if you spent 10 grand on the accessories, let's say you had the 30, if you spent 8 grand on the accessories, and then you took the other 12, whatever, 22, whatever else you got left, and you spent that on going to different lakes and tournaments, now you're going to have something.
Exactly.
Take your kid up. If you really want to help your kid out, take him up Champlain or something. Take him, spend that money and take him. Don't even do the high school stuff.
Yeah.
Go fish St. Lawrence River, some polar opposite of what you fish around here. Take him to Okeechobee.
Yeah.
Take him on a guide experience. Listen to this. One of the things that helped me the most with learning how to read electronics, I'll tell people in the app this all the time, was fishing for other species. I learned how to read electronics fishing for striper.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with bass. It was striper because we have really good striper population where we live. They live offshore.
Yep.
You get a lot of opportunities to see what stuff looks like. Where with bass, if we're being honest with bass, you're going to have, on a good day, you're going to have 2 to 4 flurries of fish catches. And there's going to be a lot of nothing in between. But if you ever figure out how to catch striper, you learn how to follow bait. So you know what that looks like. You're using usually a heavy bait that has a good reflective, it has a good return on your graph. So you see your bait going down and you get that schoolmaster of just dropping your boat and boat positioning, all of these little bitty nuances that actually matter and not a 12-inch screen versus a 9-inch screen.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to do that much. But if you would take that kid, spend that money to take them somewhere, to give them experience fishing somewhere, it will pay off so much more than the $30,000 worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Now, I know this ain't a team summit, and we're supposed to be talking about Dreamboat, but that's what I would do. My middle son, I'm pretty sure is going to want to fish, and I already done started that. I try to take him different places. Suppose I don't even want him to tournament fish. I want him to make a living fishing some other way, anything, tournament fishing, but whatever. It's his thing. Yeah. But take him somewhere. Take him anywhere. Take him saltwater fishing.
Yeah. Well, one of the fondest memories I have, and I know you know both of them well, Mitchell and Marshall.
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm going to tell you what.
Monsters.
Years ago, when we were at Toho, they were so young and so little, and they were practicing, and they would be on the boat, and they would jump between our boats, between Casey's, Marty's, our boat, and any time they were near water, it don't matter if it was alligators, it don't matter what it was. They had a rod trying to catch fish, And we're talking about these kids were 6, 7, 10. I mean, as they grew up, you could see the determination of
Fishing.
I am fishing and I'm gonna whip you. It was
Yeah.
a competition no matter what.
Now
And
look at them.
now look at it. It's
Yeah.
unreal to watch the ambition that they started out with and where it's grown to right now. It's ungodly.
And so we gotta make sure we tell the full story too, because what somebody's going to do is they're going to say, well, look at the boat they got and look at this they got, look at the truck they got. I think I remember that might have been a boat before this. I remember a little 16-foot Skeeter that they started out in. It might have been a boat before then. I don't know if that was it or not. I don't know if that was the first
yeah,
one.
little 16 foot. It was red and white.
Red and white. Yeah.
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 Yep.
It
We
didn't
got
start
it.
out with 8 grass.
No, no.
So you got to be careful. Everybody always looks at the end result and say, well, that's what I
Yeah.
got to have to get where they are. But no, they
Well,
started out fishing.
You know what was so funny is when they started out on when they lived on Lyman Lake, pretty much up there, they go off the dock and whip you off the dock.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't care. And then
Yeah.
they got in the John boat. And then,
Yep.
I mean, then they got in the little Skeeter. I mean, then it was just a constant, I mean, just a growing monster within. And now they are absolutely, I mean,
Yep.
you just can't control them.
Yeah, I think that goes for all of us. If I know we got there's probably a lot more people my age and older in the app than it is teens, but you know, when you are building these boats, when you are thinking about all the stuff you want to do, I would keep in mind leave enough budget for experiences.
Absolutely.
And when you're buying these accessories, you know, if you got a bunch of stuff, you spend all your nest egg on the equipment. That equipment is going to be outdated in about 2 to 4 years, whatever you buy.
Absolutely.
So you know, if you go gung ho there, now you don't have any money to go where it is. Don't have any money to come to the SUF Classic that we're gonna have in a couple of days. You know, in a couple of weeks. You're really not doing the thing. You're missing the thing. But definitely leave budget in your bills to go fishing and experience what you bought the boat for the entire time. I would definitely encourage you to do that.
You know, I've got a buddy that that goes down the Okeechobee with his son ever since he was young. Son never liked to fish, never done anything else. He was video game pretty much all the time and everything else. Then this last year, 12, 13 years old now, maybe 14 years old, starting to get into him a little bit. Well, he built him a little boat, got him a little boat, starting to build, and we rigged it for him. And he said, you know, I've got some money saved up for him. You know, when he really wants to kick into this, says I'm hoping he's wanting to get into it. But he says, I'm going to tell you what the best thing that's happened to him so far. He says, we took him to Okeechobee this year.
Mm-hmm.
And says he fished for 2 days and caught 2 fish.
Yeah, and he still liked it.
He still liked it.
You got something.
Yeah, he was good, but he got a little discouraged. So he basically, Pop said, hey, I'm going to rent you a guide, you know, and we're going to go out for a day. And he's going to show you how to fish Okeechobee. He said about 2 hours in, he's like, I got this. I know how to fish Okeechobee now. You know, so then the following day and the rest of the week, he smashed them. Yeah. Now you can't tell him nothing. He said he wants to go to Champagne. He wants to go Thousand. He wants to go. That's where I think that experience comes.
Experiences are it, man. Buy them, but if you want, I know most of us are in this thing for ourselves here, but like buy yourself some experiences.
Exactly.
Experiences pay for you. Even here within the app, I think that's the best thing that you can look. That's why I always tell y'all all the time to share what happened on the water, because you sharing that, a lot of the things that I've learned from fishing came from the people my circle of people that I was hanging around, the people that I knew. You know, Paul and I got a lot of the same buddies, and a lot of our stories and the way we fish just come from being around each other and talking and seeing each other either win a tournament or lose a tournament. That's so sharing those experiences. It is a part of it. Definitely share and buy yourselves, or if you're in this for your kid, buy those experiences. Spend more money on experiences than you will in equipment. The equipment, I'm telling you, that stuff comes. It comes. I don't know how it does. I can't explain it because I know I ain't have no money, and then now I'm like trying to get rid of stuff. I don't know how it happened, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I went from like not being able to have nothing on my boat to like, dang, I don't know if I want to put that on my boat this
Yeah.
year,
Exactly.
like that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know how.
Yeah.
I have no explanation for it. Paul, let's answer a few questions here to for jump on. We'll stay on another 10, 15 minutes. Michael, did you catch any questions, Michael? That
Well, so one that I thought that jumped out at me is somebody asked like 3 recommendations, top 3 best older boats. You guys were talking about, and I'd probably pile onto that. Like, what are you looking at when you're looking at used at some of those older boats? Like, what are some key things to look at?
Well, y'all got to take it. So you got to remember this. First of all, I'm a boat person. What kept me interested in boats and fishing was the fact that I love boats. I've always loved boats. I used to draw boats when I was in school. I still love them. I can call out a boat from 1978 and I'll tell you exactly what it is. I remember the classic boats. I can tell you what color they used in 1992, 93, 94. I'm just a boat kind of guy.
Yeah.
I just like boats. So man, I don't know, Paul. You probably better start because if I start talking, I might not finish that part on that one. I'll definitely give you my top 3, 4, or 5 old boats to buy.
So probably as far as it's not probably one of my favorites, but I know it's everybody else's favorites. And I have worked on every color, every year from 2002 up to the latest and greatest. But that 2002 to 2006 Ranger, 520VX, 521s, those boats are probably the most one of the most sought after boats, solid boats that was ever made. The Stratus, those line of boats. I've had, I can't tell you how many boats I've had of that, and y'all have to forgive me, is I'm an adrenaline junkie and a speed junkie. So trying to wrangle a Stratus with a 250 on it, it was like, your hair on fire.
Fast boat. It's a fast boat. They were the first fast, true bass boats that I remember during my childhood. It was a 201 XL.
Yeah.
The first, it was a fast boat, but it was also a tournament boat.
Yep.
There was a lot of fast boats that were garbage.
Yep.
That was the first one I remember being a fast boat that you actually could fish out of.
Yep. And probably my other one that I actually like, even though it had little issues here and there, but I like the older Skeeters.
Yeah.
The ZX version.
The ZX. Yep.
The ZX. They were some fast boats, but it had, I don't know if you remember, like that ZX 225 or the ZX 250. That ZX 250 had a front deck almost like that Legend V20. It was like forever.
Yep.
I had like 3 models in a row of that ZX 250, and that thing was like, you could roll around and somebody could sunbathe up there and you could still be fishing. I mean, it just had deck forever. Good riding boat, and go from there.
Yep, those are all good ones. The couple of ones that I was thinking about are in that you named there. Is that all of them? You got more? God, that's hard too.
That's probably my 3 most favorite. All the way around. Now my first, I call it real bass boat was, and I ended up hating the boat, but it was my first real boat just because I was such in a hurry to buy it, was that 391D.
That's what I was going to say. That was my first one.
And I was like, oh man, this was the latest and greatest. Everybody was like, you got to have this. And I was like, oh man, I got a Ranger. It was perfect.
That's a bad boat.
And I was like, man, it was like you added the little center piece,
the deck in the middle.
You made your little step stool, you done everything you to get up on the front deck and the under compartment storage, just whatever you could do to. But I just had that old Mercury was just it was
bad.
It was bad.
It was tough. Yeah,
so let me throw in a minute.
They were good. They were good. They were good, but they. I rather had that than a Johnson back in the day. That's for sure.
Yep.
So Yeah, man. For me, man, I'm gonna go. So Paul started in the 2002 era. So I was actually, I would call an adult by then. So I'd already had a couple, but the boat of my childhood, yeah, I still think is a cool boat. I don't think it'll ever go out of style. It'll be 20 years from now, these boats will still be bad. It's the 390V, 390, 391. The old Comanche series Rangers, 390, 391. They timeless, they look good.
Yeah.
They have a good fishing platform. They're actually pretty fast. It's a 19-foot boat rated for a 200. That boat, I don't know. A lot of things happen to boats over the years once they cross that threshold. Would that be 30 plus years now? They maybe they get a little slower. But back in the day, it was a 70, 72 mile an hour boat with 200. If I was if I was a dad and I was going to buy a boat for my high school team, high school kid to fish out of, and I don't have one, it would probably, and I had $10,000. I think you can get in that for that now, maybe. It would be that boat, 390, 391. Listen, it gets a little sketchy taking high school kids out in a smaller boat, having 2 or 3 people, but even the 360, 361, 371, 381, the 300 series Rangers of the early 90s, fabulous boats, very good fishing platforms. They look good. They will never go out of style. They're easy to work on. That would be my first farthest I would go back. Early 90s, maybe even late 80s. You can't tell the difference between them.
Hey, you know what you need to do?
What's that?
You need to come to the shop in the next 2 days.
Oh, you got one in now?
One of my lead guys, Brian.
Yeah, I know Brian, of course.
Yeah. He's got a mint 374.
Oh, yeah.
Blue and silver. I
wonder, is it blue and silver with red flake? Blue top, silver bottom, red flake, red pins?
No, I think it's just blue, blue and silver.
Okay, blue and silver.
Yeah.
Beautiful boats. Those boats will never go out of style. It's like a box Chevy. It's just always going to be cool. So that would be my first. If I didn't have a boat, I got a kid in high school, or just for myself, and I wanted to get a boat. Those were the first. Those boats were big before they were ready. During that time period, people were still running 17 to 18-foot boats with 150s, and the market wasn't ready to accept a 200 horsepower engine just yet. At that time period, they were ahead of their time. Nobody bought them back then. Nobody wanted them. It was 3 or 4. You go to Lake and see 3 or 4 a year, and then after the time passed, and then they came out with these other boats. Then they became popular. Yeah. So 390, 391. It's the same boat. It's really nothing different. And then also the 370, 380, 381s, which is the smaller boat. Same thing, but just smaller. Stratus 201 Pro XL, because it's timeless. It will never go out. So I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, or I'm going to say this to people. Falcon, y'all can call me if you want to tomorrow. The Falcon, the boat that I run, the Falcon F20 Predator, has a lot of influence from the two.